Hi there, John from Ruddy Games here, and today I'm going to show you how to play our new game, Skulldug. Skulldug is a pulp adventure game where you play as an explorer looking to make your fortune by any means necessary. As you play, you'll explore an ancient cave, building out the map as you go. Your goal is to be the first player to collect 3 treasure cards and escape back to the cave entrance to win the game. Bad news though, each of those treasures you collect is terribly cursed, so you're going to have to think real carefully about what you can afford to pick up if you're ever going to make it back out alive. You have 3 action points to spend on various actions each turn. Your first action, Move, lets you move 1 space. If you move into an unexplored passage, you must immediately discover that passage. Draw the top card from the passage deck, orient it how you want, and then fill it with the contents specified by the 2 numbers at the bottom. There are 2 decks of contents, Fortunes and Hazards. Fortunes are generally good, and include permanent equipment, one-off powerful consumable items, and of course, the cursed treasure that you need to win the game. Hazards include traps and monsters, both of which you'll have to fight if you ever encounter them. So, we drew 1 fortune and 2 hazards, a trap and a monster. Anytime you enter a passage with a hazard, you have to encounter it. So for each hazard, roll a die and see if you meet or exceed the black difficulty value written on the card to defeat it. If you defeat a trap, it goes in your hand to be used on other players, and if you defeat a monster, it's simply killed and removed from play. If you fail against a hazard, you'll have to take damage equal to the number written on the blood spot, and suffer any special injuries written on the card. If you fail against a monster, you'll also have to flee the passage, placing your explorer into the last passage you occupied this turn. Your next action is Dash, which lets you move through 2 passages for a single action point, but you can't move into an undiscovered passage, and you also can't dash through any encounters. The next action is Pick Up. Pick Up lets you pick up any item from your passage. Items are basically any card that isn't a monster, specified by a little hand icon on them. You can pick up as many cards as you want to on your turn, but you can't end your turn with more than 5 cards in your hand. So if that's the case, you'll have to drop some cards. Now, drop doesn't cost any action points, it's free. And as a bonus, you're able to drop not just in your own space, but into any passage in your line of sight. This allows you to drop traps where they'll do the most damage to other players. Next up is Throw, which functions like a superpowered drop. But instead of targeting a single passage in your line of sight, you'll actually target another explorer. Now, you'll still take a card from your hand and drop it in their passage, but then you'll both roll the die. If your roll meets or exceeds the defender's roll, they'll have to lose 1 health and drop a random card from their hand into their passage. Our other direct attack action is Shove. Shove is super simple. Just take another explorer from your passage and move them 1 space. You can move them into traps, which they'll have to encounter. You can move them into undiscovered passages and make them discover it and fight anything in there for you. Shove is super flexible and super powerful. You'll want to think really carefully about how near you want to position yourself to other players, based on if you expect to shove them, or if you think they might shove you. To put something of a limit on its power, you can only shove once per turn. Our final main action is Destroy, which, like Shove, is so powerful that you can only do it once per turn. Destroy actually lets you remove an entire passage from the board. Target a passage adjacent to you that you're facing, remove its card from the board, and then shuffle any of its contents and return them back onto the tops of their relevant decks to be rediscovered. There are a few limits on Destroy. Like we said, you can only destroy once per turn, and you can't destroy a passage that another explorer is standing in. You can also only destroy a passage that your explorer is facing, that is adjacent to you, and you have a corridor in the direction of that passage. So from here, you could destroy this passage. If things were rotated this way, you could still destroy this passage. But if things were rotated this way, you could not destroy this passage, as you don't have a corridor facing into it. Now there's one more major way you can spend action points that we haven't covered yet, and that's using the Focus action. Focus is sort of a sub-action that you can perform anytime you're about to roll the die against a difficulty, such as when encountering a hazard or when throwing an item at another player. Before you roll, you can spend action points to focus. For each action point you spend, you'll add 1 to your roll. By using Focus, you can choose how cautious you want to be as you proceed through the cave. Are you going to move slowly, spending many action points to focus each turn? Or are you never going to focus, instead using all of your action points to try and move as fast as possible through the cave? What happens when you die? You start every game with 5 health gems, and lose them as you take damage through injuries. If you run out of health, you die, but don't worry, it's not the end of the world. Simply remove your explorer from the board, drop all of the items from your hand into your last passage, and end your turn. At the start of your next turn, you'll place your explorer back in the cave entrance, take back your 5 health, and draw a fortune as a new starting item. That should be everything you need to know to get started with your first game of Skulldug. You can find out more by going to our website, skulldug.com, or by going to our Kickstarter page, where you can download the full rules PDF, or pledge to access the deluxe print and play copy of the game to try it out for yourself. Thanks for watching.